Hey guys, Nick from Arch City Poker, ArchCityPLO.com, and in today's vlog, we're going to talk about using your opponent's line against them. So what I mean by that is essentially, let's say you are in a hand with a player, and we're talking about live low stakes games as always here, and they either take a line against you or make a bet that makes you feel very uncomfortable. That is a spot that no matter the result, you want to actually review that spot probably after your session and really think about it. See if you can implement that same bet or line into your game against opponents, because if that particular line that your villain, your opponent ran against you, if that made you feel uncomfortable, then there's a really good chance that it's going to make a lot of other players feel uncomfortable as well. Uh, so you want to review that spot. Think about what type of range that you would have in that spot, what type of hands it would make sense to take that line with or make a bet with. And the thing is, your opponent, they might not be playing correctly in that spot. It might be something that you actually don't want to end up implementing. That's why you want to review it and think about it a little bit. But if it makes sense logically, even from like an exploitative perspective, meaning that we're not really worrying about game theory or balancing anything, then you might want to start implementing it. So I'll give you an example of a spot that I tend to do this. I want to make my opponents feel very uncomfortable. Is let's say I am somehow out of position. Let's say like I call from the blinds, probably the big blind, and I check call my opponent's c-bet with middle pair. If that middle pair ends up essentially pairing up on the turn, so let's say it's like king 8-3-8, that is a turn card that I often will actually lead into my opponent, whether I have trips or not. And the reason for this is that my opponent likely is not c-betting a lot of middle pair. It's a hand that has usually some showdown value. You don't usually get worse to call all that often. You often get only action from better. So that is a card that is probably going to be in the player that it's out of position. It's probably going to be in his range a little bit more often than the c-better, the player that was the pre-flop raiser. So I actually think it's a good spot to lead, and you can lead with trips. And then what I would do to balance that spot is lead with, say, some flush draws, some straight draws. Now on king 8-3-8, there might not be a whole lot out there that's a natural bluff. That's where you might need to add in some cards that block some more of his calling range. So maybe a hand like Ace Queen, where you actually block some Ace King, some King Queen. You maybe have some outs to a better hand if you do get called, but you really just want to pretty much be either blocking their calling range, or you want to have equity if called. But it's a good example of a spot that not a lot of players would think to lead in that spot. But when you do lead, think about how uncomfortable your opponent on the button or in position is going to feel. Think if you're in his shoes and how uncomfortable you would feel. And that's the whole goal of poker, is you really want to make your opponents feel uncomfortable. You want them to feel indifferent in these spots. So I know this topic is kind of, I wouldn't call it a weird one, but it's definitely a little different than the usual topics that I do talk about. But if you guys have any questions or comments, let me know, because this is an interesting topic. And I think, again, the main takeaway is basically if you're in a hand and you are uncomfortable in a spot, review that spot and see if you can flip that spot in future sessions and you be the one that's implementing that bet or that line and make your opponents feel uncomfortable like you did in that spot that you experienced that uncomfortability, I guess. So hit the subscribe button, hit the link, visit archcityplo.com. Still loading PLO and No Limit content daily on average. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.